Hello. So there's a number of talking points to go on with this one. I hope I don't run out of time. Um, Big news in the UK, of course, is the collapse of Thomas Cook. That's very sad. It's one of Britain's oldest established companies, and my thoughts are absolutely with all those people who are stranded abroad. It must be a very stressful time for them. And of course, there are understandable questions about the salary and bonuses of the CEO, as there should be. So that's a sad piece of news. The same year. Um, yeah. Anyway, um, I want to talk about Greta Thunberg. And if you are someone who loves Greta Thunberg, if you really idolize her, you're not going to like this video. But so be it. Um, I did make a previous video on this, but what can I say? The cult continues. I cannot apologize for calling it that because that's how I see it. I really see this as something akin to a personality cult being built around a potentially vulnerable young woman, and I find it frankly a bit disturbing. And this is why. By the way, there's a video going around now showing Donald Trump arriving at the UN climate summit in New York City and Greta Thunberg held back by security. Bit of clickbait there. Everyone's held back by security. And she's giving him a glare. Well, that's Trump put in his hot spot. Saint Greta has glared at him. Just for the record, I do believe that Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement is a big mistake. And I am not one of these people who say it's all fake or something like that. I do believe there is a very pressing problem with climate change. Like I said before, this is something that's affecting some of the world's most vulnerable people, particularly in low-lying Pacific nations. So I'm not one of these people that questions the science, but that's kind of an issue in itself because the overwhelming consensus is, in all probability, climate change is having a negative effect on the planet and it is human-induced. I have no doubt that an ever-increasing population plays a factor there as well. But where there is a problem, I think, is fringe groups like Extinction Rebellion, which Greta Thunberg is closely associated with, are being allowed to kind of call the narrative that there is a serious threat facing our planet is without doubt. But the extent of that threat and the right policies is a matter of debate. But Extinction Rebellion is basically saying this is a problem and only our solution is correct. And they're prepared to use sabotage. They're prepared to cause mass disruption to get their way. That cannot be right. Um, I don't believe that's a way to go about any protest. Even the Hong Kong protesters, who I strongly support, frankly, in recent weeks, more hardcore elements have been just plain rioting, and that isn't. I don't think that's good for the movement, um, because it will lose wider support for the greater cause. Um, so back to Greta Thunberg. She made a speech at the UN Climate Change Summit. And typical Greta Thunberg fashion, very angry, she got up and said, "You adults don't give a damn about my future. How dare you?" This is absolute classic Greta Thunberg. Very populist, very angry. And the irony of this is the adults that she so loves to berate and patronize and insult are the very people who put her there. And I cannot be the only person who looks at this young person berating adults, and then what do? They don't sit there awkwardly. They applaud her. I mean, what the hell? Anyone that thinks that's inspiring or cute, really, it's just weird, quite frankly. I mean, my God, we need to really step back a bit here and consider what might be happening. I've no doubt that she's genuinely passionate about the issues. I think that's sincere. I do question how much she knows about the issues. By her own admission, she's not going to do any sort of degree or course in climate change. because, as she puts it, the science is already there. Now it's only time for action. Well, the science is there's widespread consensus that there is a problem, but there is still debate about the precise extent of it. Um, what irritates me about Greta Thunberg is she comes out with these sweeping statements like, "You're not doing anything. You don't give a damn." If she's directing that at specific governments, there may be an issue there because Trump did pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. But I think leaders should have the right to answer back and say, "Well, actually, young lady, we are doing this. This is my government's policies, and your accusations are not fair." But you know what? No one's going to do that because, hey, if they answer back to a 16-year-old girl with Asperger's, then they must be an ogre. And that's what I deeply dislike about this. It's incredibly manipulative. I do think the adults are using her. I think she's genuinely passionate on one hand, but I think adults are kind of pushing her into this to score political points, and that's never a good thing. I don't think that young people should be used. Technically, she's not a child; she's a teenager, but she's very childlike. She looks about 9, and that just adds to the theatre of the whole thing. Um, I just think that we need to step back a bit and scrutinize this. And what irritates me is anyone who dares have a dissenting voice. This is the sort of excuses that people come up with. Oh, you're jealous of her, right? You're intimidated by a young person having a voice. Or even as I came across one thread last night, it's misogyny. Misogyny. Because supposedly some right wing men have been making unpleasant threats to her. If that's true, of course I utterly condemn it. But I haven't seen that. I've seen a lot of criticism of her. I haven't seen any threats. And I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying that's possibly an example of exaggeration to try and make her look like, a martyr, basically, and to try and silence anyone with legitimate criticism. Um, I would say consider what happens to child actors, right? They get huge exposure early on, and more often than not, they end up having a total nervous breakdown or dependency issues. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here. I'm not a child psychologist. I don't know what could happen, but the level of exposure that she is getting, she's not going to be a 16-year-old girl forever. One day she's going to be a young woman. She's going to be an older woman. She could even be a leader, and she'll have to realize that she cannot just berate people without someone answering back. And I think that's part of the problem here. I think she's had things her whole own way her whole life. I think no one has answered back to her. I don't know much about her family background, but from what I've heard, it's quite dysfunctional, and her parents are somewhat dubious characters. I don't know. I can't comment more about that. I'll need to do my own homework on that one. But all I'm going to say is this: the way that she's everywhere. Every news network is leading like Thunberg puts world leaders on the spot. Thunberg tells it like it is. You know, at some point you have to step back and think, well, who made her God? Who made her more smart than all the world's climate scientists? If someone's going to lecture world leaders, I prefer it to be an experienced climate scientist who actually knows what they're talking about, not a young woman who's using cheap and easy sound bites and who has no answers. And why would she? She's a 16-year-old girl, but she's coming out with these sweeping statements like, you adults don't give a damn. Well, they give a damn enough to give you a platform. And people are just encouraging this frankly obnoxious behavior. Incidentally, apparently Trump's been mocking her. Well, look, Trump is Trump, and that's gold for um, news networks, isn't it? It's like you know, being handed, he's handing it to them on a plate essentially, because he's mocking Saint Greta, if indeed that is the case. Um, but really, all these adults are bending over each other, jumping over each other to praise and adulate her. There's something very unsettling about it. Just for the record, I don't think there's anything wrong with young people being passionate. Not at all. Um, and I don't think there's anything wrong with young people getting involved in activism. I do think there is a problem when young people are starting to be used and they're put in a position where no one can challenge them. I mean, part of being a responsible adult in this world is, give and take. So she cannot just berate people and they take the abuse and they applaud her and then, no one questions her. No one says, well, actually, Greta, you're wrong about that. Or what do you think about this? Or that's an unfair statement you've just made. No one is challenging her. That's not cute. It's not inspiring. I don't think it's healthy. Let me know your thoughts.